If you want your holiday pie to be over the top delicious, you're gonna need a really good crust recipe. Food processors are the key to slamming out a perfect pie crust in less than 10 minutes. I've got mine fitted with the blade attachment here. We're gonna add in a few ingredients and then I'm going to talk to you about the most important ingredients. To the bowl of the food processor, you're gonna add 2 3/4 cups all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of fine sea salt, and 1.5 tablespoons of granulated sugar. Now we're just gonna situate this lid right back onto the food processor and we're gonna pulse until these ingredients are looking nice and combined. Here we have both butter and shortening, and both of these ingredients are ice cold. I cannot even begin to stress to you how important it is that your fats going into your pastry dough are cold. It is the key to perfect pie crust. Well, that and the fact that we're using the combination of 2 fats. Butter is what is going to help your pie crust to bake up extra flaky, and it's gonna give it excellent flavor. Shortening is going to keep your pie crust nice and soft and make sure that it bakes up really tender and perfect. I like to stand up my butter on its little hind rears and then I cut it lengthwise twice. Then I lay the butter flat side down and cut it into slices. You'll end up with nice, perfectly sized little 1/4 inch dices. The shortening, on the other hand, doesn't dice nearly as pretty, so we're just gonna do our best to cut it into little cubes. And we're just gonna scatter the butter and the shortening all across the top of our dry mix. We're gonna come back and we're gonna pulse again just until the butter and the shortening is distributed all throughout this dry mix here. And the last and final ingredient is water, but not just any water. Just like the fats, the water needs to be super duper cold. What I'll typically do is fill up a measuring pitcher with a cup of water with some ice cubes thrown in. Give it a little jiggle, wait for that water to get really, really cold. Then I'll remove the ice and add 2/3 cup of cold water into the food processor. You just wanna stream it in nice and slow, pulsing until you can see that that dough really starts to come together. If your dough starts to come together before all 2/3 cup of the water has been added, you can go ahead and stop there. And by comes together, I mean you can pinch it together in a little ball in your hand, just like this. Now at this point, I like to bring in a bowl and finish the rest by hand. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the blade and let that dough fall right into the bowl here. Flour my hands a little bit, and then I'm just gonna really gently knead the dough together in a little ball. I'll do it over a bowl because sometimes we have some crazy little crumbles that you don't expect to go flying out. This way, if you do it in the bowl, you just catch it all and you can bring it all back together. And I'm gonna come in with a knife and I'm just gonna cut this in half. Lay down some plastic wrap, grab one of these little guys and form it into a little ball. Press it down, flatten it out just a bit, bring over the edges and wrap it up. And then we're just gonna repeat with the other. Now we're gonna take these little beauties and we're gonna pop them in the fridge for at least 2 hours before trying to roll them out. Now we're gonna talk about rolling out that pie crust. Rolling out pie crust can feel really tricky because if you roll out pie crust when it is ice cold, it'll crack. If you roll out pie crust when it's not cold enough, it'll be too sticky and it'll slump down when it bakes in the oven. So I found that just setting that pie crust out about 15 minutes before you plan to work with it is the way to go. So I'm gonna dust my work surface with flour here, unwrap the crust, top it off with a little more flour and give it a nice little pat. Now I'm gonna begin rolling out the pie crust starting from the center and pushing outward. And every time I roll here in the beginning, I'm gonna pick up the pie crust and I'm gonna turn it just a little bit. This is gonna help the crust from sticking to the mat. Once it starts to flatten out, you can start just pushing out from the center. Don't really have to move it around so much. And now I'm just gonna run my hand across the surface and I'm feeling for any uneven spots, any spots on the crust that feel higher than others. That one wanted to come with me. And when you see something like that happen, typically means you need to add a little more flour. before you roll again. Okay, so this is good. That's as close to a circle as I'm going to get. Bring in my pie dish, and I'll just really gently unravel it. Need to situate this a little more over here, but be really gentle when you're moving it around, because the more pressure and the more you work on that crust, the tougher that pie crust is gonna be. And we want a really tender, flaky, perfect pie crust. Now I'm just gonna fold over my edges. And as you saw, this recipe makes enough for 2 pies. So if you don't plan to bake 2 this holiday season, you can freeze 1 for later. And then I'll just gently come along and press in on the sides here and sort of blend these edges together. And this is about as decorative as I get. Just come in and kind of crimp the edges a bit. My pies are always a little rustic looking, but they always taste the most amazing. And then I kind of just pat it down, and that's it. If you're looking for more amazing holiday recipes to serve up this season, be sure to check out my Thanksgiving playlist next.